Good day, everybody. Coach John Meria here of Project Pod, life coach, study coach, special education teacher, or whatever you want to call me. I'm here to help out your middle schoolers, high schoolers, and college students overcome their neurodevelopmental difficulties. Before we get on with our topic today, which is on the role of failure among those with neurodevelopmental difficulty, let me show you a video of my 20-month-old daughter, Jordan. Okay, so there she is. You can see she's quite adorable. All right, and in this video, she's doing something here because in order to teach her to pay attention, okay, we try to delegate some simple chores to her, and one of the chores that she enjoys is peeling the leaves of broccoli stalks. Okay, so yes, you can eat the leaves, but that's another story. All right. So as you can see here, the first time she did it, this is the video of the first time she did a great job. And we've also found that it's a good way to keep her out of trouble, while I'm cooking in the kitchen. Of course, she wants to see what Daddy's doing, and, she's very happy to contribute. And, however, the second time I made her do it, though, she got off to a good start, same as the first time, but all of a sudden, while I was cooking, I hear this huge thud, like, on the floor. And when I saw it, it was the bowl full of broccoli leaves and florets just on the floor. So this bowl that you saw in the video was on the floor, and it was just, all of the leaves and the florets were messy on the floor. And when I saw it, I couldn't contain myself in my impulsive tendency, so I just went and shouted, "Oh no!" Okay? But after a few moments, when I regained my composure, I began to think. I saw the spilled vegetables on the floor. Then I saw the face on my daughter. She was stunned, looking paralyzed as she was holding one of the broccoli leaves just like this. Right? And I realized, wait a minute. Are those vegetables on the floor really that big of a deal? Because when you think about it, I could just pick them up, wash them, and just continue on forward. I realized that I had to mend this with Jordan, lest I risk some sort of permanent effect on her, and that impression of her own failure. Okay, so she was the one who dropped the bowl, and I didn't want that experience of failure to keep her from trying in the future. So, okay, I'd like to think that cleaning the vegetables is much easier to do than undoing the effect of my disapproval on my daughter's failure. So, I take a deep breath, I get up, right, and I tell her, "Jordan, I'm sorry, Daddy should not have shouted like that, okay? It's no big deal, we can pick it up, we can continue, look, I'll even help you." Okay, so I picked up the vegetables, I put it back there, and said, "Okay, let's do the peeling together," and we did it together. So I told Jordan, it's okay to make mistakes, every once in a while, and if you fail, the important thing is that you pick it up and you try it and you continue on. And we finished it together, and we had delicious Chinese-style broccoli that night. Okay, so in that particular instance, I guess I was very blessed and fortunate enough that my empathy kicked in before I could have made what was potentially like a permanent impression of failure on my daughter. Okay, just like I said. So, you see, I'm an adult with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But before I became an adult with ADHD, I was once a child with ADHD. And I understand, because of that for a person with a neurodevelopmental difficulty, or dare I say any disability, based on my experience with the NCDA, the National Council for Disability Affairs, Ma'am Carmen Zubiaga, shout out to you. My experience here is that people with disability, there's this crippling fear of failure that I see as a common problem among that demographic. So today, I'm going to talk about why this is so and what we can do about it. Okay? So the fear of failure is common among individuals with neurodevelopmental disability, as both having a nature and a nurture component. This means that it's both an issue of how the brains are wired and also an issue of the environment that the person is raised in, particularly and especially during the childhood stage, okay? And there's very strong evidence in research nowadays that ADHD is not just an issue of attention or hyperactivity and impulsivity, but also has many other components into it. For example, emotional dysregulation or emotional control problems. One interesting branch of research recently was to see ADHD as having an issue dealing with failure and criticism, to the point that this phenomenon even has a name. It's called rejection sensitive dysphoria. Okay? So you can look that up. But the way I see it, everyone, I think every human being has this strong need to be accepted and to be affirmed. And when you have a condition that also impairs your emotional control, makes you behave in ways that could cause issues for other people, it will have an effect on your self-esteem and, eventually the way you deal with criticism and failure. So this is where the nurture part comes in. So, and like I mentioned, this is not just for people with neurodevelopmental disability, but for any person with a disability. And this is so because, especially for a child or a young person, okay, and then you go through school and things like that, you're always reminded as you compare yourself to your peers and the other people around you of what you cannot do, while the other individuals, you see them doing things that, they're so capable of so many things. You're always reminded of what you cannot do and what they can do. So the disability is much more noticeable in a setting like that. And of course, during that time, it's also harder to process because you're just a kid. You're not an adult yet. So it's definitely going to have that effect on your self-esteem, right? So I remember this sharp experience when I was a kid. Like, when I was in grade school, I didn't even think of myself as being academically capable or capable of pretty much anything. I wasn't good at athletics. I wasn't good at any of the subjects in particular. And of course, I always got into trouble. I remember this one time in third grade when a teacher just pulled me out of class. Okay, as in, he pulled me by the ear and dragged me all across the room with 40 other people in the classroom, and just left me outside the classroom, and until the end of the period. What made me sad was not the fact that I was being punished for something. Of course, I was kind of used to that. But what made me sad was he didn't even tell me what I was being punished for. So I had to ask my classmates, like, why was I being punished? And they said that I was so noisy, and I didn't even notice that. I didn't even remember me being noisy or talkative at that particular point in time. So, of course, though repeated incidents like that kind of like piled up, and of course that would never happen today. Of course, teachers are not allowed to do that anymore. This was in the 90s. I guess it was wrong back then as well. But yeah, just to let you guys know, yeah, and then it's not just a matter of the behavior as well. When it comes to academics, when you see that even the guy that isn't considered smart is getting like 20 points above you while you're getting a 0, 1, 2, or 3, that definitely has that effect on you. I was just fortunate enough that when I got to the 5th grade, there was this math teacher, and shout out to you. I couldn't find her. Her name is Miss Amelia Viado. I still remember that. I remember that when I showed up with these behaviors, she made it a point to set up an appointment with my dad, okay, and wanted to talk to him. Of course, I wasn't happy about it back then. I thought that my dad was going to get mad at me or was going to get punished or something like that. But instead, I guess what went on in that meeting was that she said to my dad that, I had potential, I needed to be supported at home and things like that. My dad worked on it. He became my math tutor. He got external math tutors for me. And by the time I got to the end of grade 5, I realized that I actually liked math. Okay, so with the right approach, some of the potentials that weren't there, not because of intellect issues, IQ issues, but really because of emotional experiential issues or issues with dealing with disability, we aren't able. It could potentially cover up some of the hidden talents that are there. So to this day, I'm very thankful to that math teacher. If any of you know her, okay, of that math teacher, please let me know. I would love to just kind of reconnect with her and tell her how much of an impact she made in my life, okay? So when you look at these two examples, I'm not necessarily against being tough. Both of these teachers were tough. But the difference was that one was tough in a way that made me feel like a failure. While the other one, while it made me feel like a failure in a way, it was also, it just made me feel like that failure was just part of the process because she saw something in me and that she was right. Okay? So, just moving forward in the story a little bit, by the time I was in grade six, I was actually training to. I became so good in math that my parents thought that they should set me up for an entrance exam at the most prestigious high school in the country, and it was a science high school. And of course, I worked hard at it the best I could. The end of the story is that, you know, here's the thing as well. My dad promised that he would give me a trading card. To this day, I'm a fan of trading card games. I play Magic the Gathering. Back then, I played Pokemon. So my dad had this expensive Pokemon card, and he said, "Okay, I'm gonna give you this Alakazam if you pass that exam." So it made me work hard. And the end of it, on my birthday, no less, I called up that school and I found out that I didn't make it, so I was crying. And on that day, my dad sat with me and said, "Here's the Alakazam." And that was an interesting gesture that resonates with me until today because my dad recognized that and wanted to reward my hard work. He didn't want to reward the fact that I succeeded or failed. And therefore, my dad, even in the little things, it wasn't just that one incident. My dad would communicate to me that his approval of me was not really dependent upon my performance. His approval of me was there no matter what. He just wanted me to try my best or work hard. And since that day, I would say that while I was considered one of the smarter kids in class, I was rarely the first honors all the way through. I could be like the second or the fifth best and things like that. I would make careless mistakes. I would get burnt out. There would be many teachers that would question why I did that. I didn't know back then it was due to ADHD and such. But I like that because today I now have what I call this underdog mentality. And so whenever I deal with situations, like even on this YouTube channel, I make it a point that I don't have to do everything perfect. I just gotta get in there. I gotta figure things out, right? Learn from my mistakes and things like that. And so, one of the interesting, one of the most interesting people, I guess, with a disability, although he doesn't have a neurodevelopmental disability, is this guy with Nick Vujicic. I'm sure many of you guys watching this have already heard of him. He's the guy who was born without limbs. And he said these things about failure. There are four things, good things about failure. Number one, it is a great teacher. Number two, it builds character. Three, it motivates you to do better, I guess. And it helps you to appreciate success. Number four really resonates with me because without that journey, it's really tough for me to go, the journey of ups and downs, including the failures, it's tough for me to appreciate success. No? And which is why sometimes, my heart goes out to the individuals who are gifted, meaning they have high IQ and things like that, like incredibly high IQs. I've met a lot of them now. I believe that when they've been conditioned to believe that they are the best, and then, it kind of gets to them that they have to perform to a certain standard all the time. Sometimes that's unhealthy for some individuals, and that causes a lot of mental health issues. So my heart goes out to you if you're one of those individuals who experience that. I do handle a lot of students who experience that before. So I actually think that being used to failure early on, and this is just my opinion, that I haven't found any clinical studies on this yet, but I think experiencing failure early on is better than not failing at all and then experiencing failure later in the future when your brain is more permanent already. When your brain is more, of course, there's no such thing as no change, but I think it's harder to adapt when you're older. So when you learn to experience failure when you're young, all I'm saying is that that's a good thing than not having to experience it at all. So what are some of my tips for anybody who wants to get over this crippling fear of failure? Okay, so I have a few tips for you. The first tip is I want you guys to establish a realistic view of failure at home. So whether you are a person with a neurodevelopmental condition or you're a parent of a person with a neurodevelopmental condition, set up something realistic. Okay, so I come from an Asian country, and in Asian countries we definitely want to put formal academic intelligence. We put a lot of value into that. Nothing wrong with achieving and doing well academically, of course, that's a good thing. But when that becomes the culture to the point that the value of a person is just measured by that one thing, that becomes unhealthy because uh, most individuals, right, will definitely have a couple of weak spots. Most individuals will definitely fail a test or two and things like that, and need to be able to process that. That's a realistic thing to to have. So, while I don't believe that people should be told not to work hard and things like that, I do believe that we should establish a culture at home where failure can be processed, failure can be understood, failure can be talked about. You feel safe talking about failure, right? So yes, it starts at home, as they always say. Okay? My second tip is to train yourself to be more comfortable with failure. So this means that you expose yourself to opportunities first that might have a failure component there. So an example of this is to take on a commitment or training in something that you're not really good at. Like for example, for me, I would say I'm a decent singer when you give me a karaoke machine or something like that, but not really a singer when it comes to performances and things like that. But back then, I had this stage fright back then, so I joined a theater group in my college. Shout out to all people watching who were members of Blue Repertory. And I kid you not, in my batch, there were people who won singing contests, people who are now in Broadway or West End and things like that. It's just crazy to think how good they were. And to be exposed to them really took that pressure off me. And I really just focused on working as hard as I could, improving myself and overcoming that stage fright. And that was a great experience for me because it's not necessarily something I'm good at. Now, I know what some parents are thinking, because if you're a parent who's been to a lot of seminars already, you might be thinking, well, Coach John, I've been told to focus on my child's strength. Okay? Yes, that's true. Okay, that is actually not contradictory to the thing about, to this thing that I'm talking about here, to take on something you're uncomfortable with, but that's not out of your comfort zone. The context of the advice to focus on the child's strengths goes actually to advice number one, where there are a lot of families that just want their children to achieve, especially academically speaking, right? Even though that's not the specific area of that child's strength, like forcing a child to play basketball when it's not really his thing, forcing a child, for example, to be really good at math and that's really not really his thing. So yeah, in that context, you want to focus on the strengths, but it's not wrong either to just do something out of the blue. Recently I've been doing painting, for example, with my wife, and that has been a great experience. I'm not really so much of an art person, but I think I did a good job with my first try with this octopus right here. Okay, and my third tip is actually a quotation from Nick Vujicic. Nick Vujicic said that what we all need to remember is that life is not a pass-fail test. It's a trial and error process. So my third tip is basically to always remember that failing is okay. All right? Failing and being able to take mistakes and failure in your life is actually a way of self-love. Now, I don't advocate for people to do self-love in such a manner that you want to garner attention. No, self-love means that you take care of yourself, that you be kind to yourself. And when you're kind to yourself, right, especially if you have a neurodevelopmental condition, you're moving forward and things like that, you'll find that you'll be more comfortable with failure over and over again because you'll even learn how to laugh at your mistakes and things like that. Okay? So that's about it for our topic for today. So if you're one of those individuals who feels like you have this crippling fear of failure, I hope this video has been helpful to you. And if this video is something you enjoyed, something that's interesting, please share it. Please subscribe. Okay, please join our Facebook page as well. It's all linked down below. We also have a Facebook group where we have positive discussions on topics, neurodevelopmental difficulty, as well as of mental health. So, with that, this is Coach John signing off. Okay, God bless you with this video of Jordan.
Back na, this one, no need na. No need. Okay, high five. Jordan, high five muna, high five, fist bump, fist bump. Fist.